So it's probably not surprising that the guy who literally raps a D&D story plays a lot of D&D, but it might surprise you that I usually play as a wizard, not as a bard. Or maybe it won't surprise you because, you know, wizards absolutely fuck and 5e bards are fine. In any case, it definitely won't surprise you that being both a player and a DM for going on 2 decades now, shut up, I'm not old, means that I've seen some absolute bangers, and many of those bangers involve technicalities, every player's best friend and worst enemy. Still, in the last 2 years, one technicality in particular has come up in multiple games and multiple ways, and that's the technicality of what a portable hole is. According to the description, it's a piece of fabric that can be folded up real small or spread out on the ground. If you spread it out, it becomes the 6-foot wide, 10-foot deep, extra-dimensional hole. If you roll it up, everything and or everyone inside of it stays inside of it, and no matter what it's filled with, it weighs next to nothing. Specifically, it cannot create a tunnel or hole in the wall to enter a building though, because the space is extra-dimensional, and the fact that the hole weighs next to nothing, no matter its contents, explicitly means that the extra-dimensional space itself doesn't move between the time that you fold it and the time you unfold it. It's anchored in its own dimension. You're not picking up and moving the space, you're moving the entrance. That's the most important part to understand. Super quick side note, I'll remind you one more time later. Support me. By God, if you're watching, you better be subbed. Come on. Anyway, wizards are a fun class to play. You get to hide behind teammates early on and explore roleplay a lot more since you're not really useful yet, and over time, as you slowly gain the ability to stand on your own 2 feet, you learn unique skills that will serve you both in and outside of combat. And the most important one of those skills is reading. Reading every spell very, very carefully, examining its every limitation and flaw, and really nailing down the technicalities involved. For example, Glyph of Warding, a 3rd level abjuration spell, lets you blow 200 gold worth of powdered diamond and incense and spend an hour drawing a landmine that really works. Specifically, you can draw a glyph with a maximum size of 10 feet across and no minimum size, and that glyph will trigger upon, let's see. Anything, literally any circumstance you define as broad or specific as you feel like making it. The examples given include normal things like walking on or near it, touching it, uncovering it, that kind of thing, but then it specifies that you can refine the trigger much further, stating that you can set requirements involving physical or racial traits or characteristics, creature types, alignments, etc., and you can include a password to trigger it or keep it from triggering. But critically, most importantly, once you create the glyph, the object or surface you've inscribed it on can't move more than 10 feet. Oh, fiddlesticks. It disappears if you move it. Crap. Can anyone think of a way to like change where something with a glyph of warding on it is, but without it actually technically moving? Yeah, I know. Let's fucking cook. Step 1, take your portable hole, fill it almost all the way up with sand, rocks, dirt, old clothes, copies of the ET game, whatever. It literally doesn't matter unless you're really sick, then you should fill it with black powder, just not a liquid, that's all. And leave like a foot of open air at the top. Step 2, place a single tiny object, something like a piece of copper or a book or something, on top of all that junk and put a glyph of warding on that. Use the basic explosive version, we'll get to the other stuff later, keep it simple for now. A 3rd level explosive glyph of warding deals 5d8 damage of a type you specify from the typical 5, fire, cold, thunder, lightning, or acid. I'd pick thunder, it's the least resisted type out of those options, so it's most likely to do the full amount of damage to whatever triggers it instead of being resisted and only dealing half. Step 3, do it again. Step 4, do it again. Step 5, do it again. Step 6, you get it. We're just gonna go ahead and do this like, I don't know, a lot of times. As many times as you possibly can afford to do it. Spend some real time and effort and money on it. If you have, say, I don't know, like a level 7 wizard, you have 3 3rd level spells each day, 1 4th level spell, and also with your arcane recovery, you get back another 4th level spell, then that means 15d8 between the 3rd level glyphs and 12d8 between the 4th level glyphs, so 27d8 worth of damage prepared per day. And if you're loading these up 1 coin at a time into that pit, you're going to be able to fit a lot of them in one spot. When you think you've done this enough, or the stakes are high enough, or the odds are low enough, or your DM just really feels like they have you on the ropes, then bust out the portable planet cracker within 10 feet of an enemy you'd like to stop existing, and poof, problem solved. But wait, I hear you ask, won't I die too? The answer is, no. As long as you're backing me on Patreon. Depending on whether your DM super duper follows the rules exactly as written, or whether they do some reasonable interpretation, you really might not, because at the tippy top of the glyph of warding spell description, it technically specifies that the glyph affects other creatures, meaning not the caster, meaning if the caster is standing at ground zero when this thing goes off, possibly the tidal wave of arcane fallout will just bend right around them. You know, actually, speaking of bending right around stuff, the spell specifies the explosion goes around corners, so no, you won't lose some of the spell's efficacy because the rim of the portable hole is in the way or something. Anyway, it's obviously perfectly reasonable to assume the caster would take damage from a huge AoE spell like that, and I think the majority of DMs would rule it that way. But just to play devil's advocate here, it would make sense why the explosion wouldn't affect the caster. I mean, it's basically an explosive security measure. You could put it on the door to your room and blow somebody up for sneaking in on you in your sleep, and it's not crazy to think the inventor of a spell like that would prefer the caster isn't affected by the explosion they set to trigger in their own home or laboratory or whatever. Furthermore, it does specify creatures as well, not the environment, not an area. It says other creatures. So again, the inventor of a spell like that is trying not to destroy all their books and research or their home or their belongings or anything like that. It's just supposed to affect specific creatures. So either ruling is fair and not stupid, and don't argue with your DM over it, but it does technically say the word. I do want to say though also, I understand that the money involved here is a limiting factor. I mean, some campaigns are super gritty and you might just not have the cash on hand to blow on 1,000 gold per day preparation, but by the time you're a high enough level to employ such liberal use of a spell this specific, and you have a portable hole laying around, you more than likely do have at least enough money on hand at any given time to explore the possibility of pulling this off, even if it's not quite to the scale I'm suggesting, and the rewards would be unbelievable in exchange. I mean, you know, if your DM is really super duper cool about it. Here's what I mean. Let's pretend you have that level 7 wizard I mentioned earlier, and you're going into a downtime period after, say, I don't know, delving into 2 dungeons back to back and absolutely icing 2 different bosses metaphorically cakes. You have some fat treasure stacked and some serious time to kill, and something to prove. Your party members spend all their downtime hobnobbing with local officials, studying their crafts to hone their skills, just maxing and relaxing, but you're built different. You've got that Sigma grind set going. You spend 2 full weeks adding 5 shiny coins to your Doomsday device every day. The party knows what you're doing and they tacitly agree to lend you some of the money from their treasure piles to let you do this insane nonsense of yours. And by the end of your 2 weeks, you've got a hairpin trigger on a portable hole fat man that will immediately explode upon you unfurling it within range of a hostile enemy and saying the secret trigger word, dealing 378 D8 worth of white hot fury damage to anything within 10 feet that's not you. For comparison, a fully grown Tarrasque has under 700 HP total, while this mini nuke would deal an average of 1,890 damage, which, even if the thing succeeds all 378 saving throws somehow, I mean, it does make them with advantage, so you know, and it reduces the damage total down to half, that would still be over 900 damage. That is pretty much guaranteed 1-turn kill on a Tarrasque, which I don't know if you realize this, but that's worth a lot of XP. Like a lot of it. That level 7 wizard, level 15 now, possibly level 16 depending on what you've done before this point, and it only cost about 14,000 gold total. Again, if your party is really nailing it at the moment, that's probably all your money, but it is also elevating the whole party from pretty strong to some of the strongest people in the world overnight. You'd make that money back tomorrow at your new level. And ultimately, the damage you did to that Tarrasque was just from 70 coins. Do you have any idea how many glyphs you could fit in there if you wanted to? Even if whoever you're up against can dispel magic or counterspell or what have you, any magic effect like that generally has to be done per instance of a spell. Anyway, let's pretend you have extra spells to burn and your DM doesn't like the idea of the pocket nuke that miraculously doesn't fry the caster. They've decided you can't stand in the impact crater without getting fried. Fine. Instead of explosive glyphs, you create ones that will trigger a summon or conjure spell. Conjure animals would be great. Ow, darn it. The wizard doesn't get that. Well, if you have a ring of spell storing and a druid who does have that spell, just have them cast it into the ring, which does not require attunement to do. The ring specifically states that anyone can cast spells into it. It doesn't say the person has to be attuned to the ring or even that they have to be wearing it. They can just be touching it. And then you make the glyph as normal, and per the description of the glyph awarding spell, you cast the triggered spell as part of the process of making the glyph, meaning you cast the spell from the ring, which you're 100% allowed to do. Come on, DMs. Let it go. So we'll call this version the portable hole pocket zoo. Set the trigger for all the glyphs to be a password, set them all to cast conjure animals to create, say, 8 wolves each. Fortunately, casting a concentration spell via a glyph of warding means that the spell doesn't require you to maintain concentration. Instead, the spell simply lasts its maximum duration. And because that's the case, there's technically no limit to how many animals you can spawn this way, and it doesn't cost you an action or anything to command the animals. They obey verbal commands from the moment they appear. Okay, you're broke, I get it. You don't have money for all these glyphs of warding, but you know it's nice and free? Rocks. So fill the pit with just tons and tons of rocks, literally tons of rocks. Anybody in your party with Mage Hand can fly the hole up to the ceiling and apply it there if your DM is cool and doesn't suck, because by all accounts, Mage Hand does have its limits, but the biggest limits on Mage Hand are the weight issue and the can't wield weapons issue. Portable Hole is not a weapon. Portable Hole weighs next to nothing per its description, no matter what. So, boom, you cause a metric murder ton of rocks to fall on an enemy. If your DM is cheap, this might only cause falling damage, but if they love you and cherish you, they might rule this counts as something pretty serious. If they let you do it, but it barely does damage though, don't fret, just get more creative. Instead of rocks, try vials of acid. Be really clear about how many vials of acid you're putting in there, because that will determine how many vials worth of acid you can reasonably calculate should get applied to the enemy. Or collecting all the melee weapons you loot off enemies and tossing those in there. What's that? 8 short swords, 2 long swords, a rapier, 16 daggers, 4 maces, and 2 darts all fall on that guy? Or just do the simplest thing. Push people into it. It's 10 feet deep. That's really deep. They'll only take a d6 of falling damage, but more importantly, if they're in there, then they're probably just out of the fight, period. I mean, you know, depending. The description states the creatures can exit the hole by climbing out, but the majority of people you fight won't have a climb speed, meaning it'll cost most people 20 feet of their movement to climb up 10 feet. And if they were pushed in there, they should be prone, because generally speaking, falling means you end up prone. If they are prone, they have to spend half their movement to stand up. So, since most creatures only have 30 feet of movement speed, they only have 15 feet of movement left, meaning they can't climb out with 20 feet of movement on their first turn after falling unless they dash, probably as an action, because again, most people you fight won't have a bonus action dash. If they do dash, then they can stand up and climb out, and they'll have probably another 25 feet of additional movement, but they'll have to move within reach of whoever pushed them, meaning attack of opportunity if you're lucky. But the majority of low-level jobber enemies will have a very bad time recovering from being thrown into a portable hole, and if your DM sees fit, they could rule that the smooth sides of the pit would be difficult to climb and require a skill check from the enemy. I mean, you know, they don't have to rule that, but they might. If you really want to hedge your bets, just fill the bottom of the hole with enough oil for your victim to get coated, and that should reasonably make it difficult terrain in terms of the baddie trying to climb out. And in that case, their movement would be 1/3. It would cost them 15 feet to stand up and then 30 feet their entire dash to climb out. Meaning they could only get 15 feet away from the hole once they're out. Meaning they're within range to be grappled and dragged back to the hole at half speed per the rules on forced movement for most PC movement speeds of 30 feet and pushed back in again. Or just, you know, light them on fire now that they're soaked in oil. Either way, if you're not sure about the oil, fine, cast web into the hole and then push people in. Web explicitly makes the area difficult terrain, so movement cost is doubled no matter what, but they also have to do a dex save if they go into the web. If they pass, they still have to spend half their movement to get up and then spend their entire action on a dash to climb back out. They're not actually going anywhere fast, so again, grab them, drag them back, push them back in. But if they fail, that is it. They are stuck in there for now. At that point, either they are not leaving, or they're blowing their action on a strength check to break free of the webs, and if they do that, even if they pass, they can't climb out because they already spent their action on the check. So they spend half their movement standing up, and they do not have enough left to climb out, which means when it circles back to their next turn, they're still in the web and they have to make the dex save again. If you've got real problems though, you might have a budding necromancer in your party. I don't know, just maybe. And as we all know, necromancers love collecting dead people. That animate dead spell is no joke. It doesn't require concentration, and it actively makes it easier and easier for the caster to maintain control over more and more undead. But where in the world could you reasonably store all these horrible rotting companions? I mean, most people in most places are really not into seeing dead people walking around, whether they're friendly or not, so you're gonna get some bad looks and or death threats, unless you happen to have a portable space that's big enough to fit several humanoids in it. I will say there's no specific rule about how many creatures can fit into a space. I mean, the 1 medium creature per 5-foot square thing is specifically meant for combat. The 5-foot square is the space you need to swing or aim weapons optimally. That's all that is. But I can't imagine most DMs ruling that you can only fit 2 skeletons in such a big area. For sure, you can fit at least 10 skeletons into that space. Like for sure. DMs, come on. For Sure, you can fit 10 skeletons in there. Here's a tip. The write-up for the portable hole says that there's enough air in there for a creature to survive for 10 minutes, after which time they begin to suffocate. There's a second level Spelljammer spell called Air Bubble that puts a globe of fresh air over a creature's head and it lasts for 24 hours. Do you need to smuggle someone? Put them in the hole, toss in a bunch of other random crap. I recommend camp supplies like tents and torches and tarps and stuff like that, because it's 100% reasonable that you'd store all that stuff just in a portable hole and it'll totally cover whoever's hiding in there. Then if anyone bothers to make you open the hole, it just looks like you're disorganized. And voila! You're sneaking your party safely into the castle after the king mysteriously requested you be brought there alone, or your rogue is having an absolute cakewalk stealthing through the danger zone without the paladin's armor playing the Come Get Me song for everyone to hear, or your ranger rolls up to the party, puts them in her pocket for the all-day flight from one end of the continent to the other, and that way you only need one creature who can fly that far instead of needing 5, etc. Worst case scenario, if that 24 hours comes up and something's gone terribly wrong, it's only a DC 10 strength check to bust out. I mean, if you keep rations in there and your caster's in there to re-up the fresh air spell before the timer runs out, you could have a couple people stay in the hole almost indefinitely. Now, there's some use cases for applying the hole to a wall or a mountainside, walking almost all the way into it, casting Tiny Hut, and then put that impenetrable Tiny Hut wall to the side, and now you've got a secure space for the length of a long rest. The detail regarding the hole containing only 10 minutes of air is based on it being folded up. If it's still applied to a surface, then it's still open. There's no reason to assume it's not still getting air, meaning unless it gets folded up, you can breathe just fine. Just be sure to specify that the Tiny Hut wall goes slightly in front of the portable hole and not inside of it, because otherwise somebody might just walk up and peel you off the wall and trap you inside, which sucks for you, man. In the same vein, it's actually possible to hide in plain sight by applying it to a wall and then putting a relatively flimsy cover in front of it, like placing the hole on a window and pulling a curtain in front of it, or hiding underneath an innocuous object, for example, pulling back the blanket on a bed, placing the hole on the mattress and pulling the blanket back over the hole, or applying it to the underside of a crate, hiding in the extra dimensional space. Someone thinking you might be hiding in that crate would open the top of the crate and just see the crate's contents. Even if they broke the crate apart, as long as they didn't specifically break the bottom of the crate, the least likely part for them to break, they would never find you. It would just be a flipped over piece of wood with your portable hole on the other side of it and you perfectly safe. There are so many ways to abuse the extra dimensional space created through a 2D plane. It's frankly unfathomable. I feel like at this point it's pretty clear the portable hole is a 0 out of 10 item that any DM out there definitely should not give to their players. But hey, players, if your DM is a total sucker and already made that mistake, congratulations. Now there's probably about 20 million more game-breaking ways to use the portable hole. I'm sure I only scratched the surface. So if you're a player or a DM with some war stories about how your party's portable hole was put to bad use, I would love to hear about them. And I'm definitely not only saying that because I'm playing in a campaign right now where our party has 2 of them, and I just want to know more ways we can ruin our wonderful DM's plans. That's not why I'm asking. It's for engagement. Also, like I said earlier, I'm going to remind you now, pay me. Give me your money. I'm trying to make a job out of this. Like the video, man. This is my livelihood now. Comment. Go get on my Patreon. Go get on my coffee. Buy me coffee. Pay me money.